This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Max and Mia podcast, the place where we help you level up your English one conversation at a time.
That's right. Good to have you here with us today. Whether you're on the bus, at the gym, or just relaxing at home, we're glad you tuned in.
All right, so before we get into today's episode, how's it going, Mia?
Honestly, it's been one of those weeks, Nothing crazy, just a lot of small things adding up.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Okay, so Monday was fine. Tuesday, I forgot my coffee at home, and I was completely useless until like noon. Wednesday, I had a meeting that could have been an email, and then Thursday, my internet just died for 3 hours.
Oh no, during work hours?
During work hours, I was on my phone using data trying to send files. It was a whole thing.
That sounds exhausting. I had a pretty chill week, actually. Went to the market on Saturday morning, came back, made lunch, watched a movie. Nothing special, but sometimes that's exactly what you need.
Honestly, that sounds perfect. What movie?
It was an old one, a thriller. I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't seen it, but it was really good. We can talk about it after the episode.
Deal. Okay, should we get into today's topic?
Let's do it.
So, as you guys know, every Sunday we bring you 3 conversations, 3 real-life scenarios where you can hear the difference between a basic level of English and an intermediate level.
And the idea isn't to say one is wrong and the other is right. It's more about showing you how you can express the same idea in a more natural, more fluent way.
Exactly. Same situation, same meaning, but different vocabulary, different structure. And that's what we're here for.
We've got 3 great scenarios for today. I think you're really gonna find them useful.
Okay, so let's start with the first topic for today.
Okay, so our first scenario today is one a lot of people can relate to. We've all been there, on one side or the other.
That's right. Imagine your friend is about to go back to their ex. And you really know it's a bad idea. What do you say? How do you say it without making things worse?
And that's actually the hard part, isn't it? Because you don't want to lose the friendship, but you also can't just stay quiet.
Exactly. So we're gonna listen to 2 versions of that conversation. Mark and Sophie are friends, and Mark is thinking about getting back with his ex. Sophie's the one trying to talk some sense into him.
Pay attention to how each of them expresses themselves. Mark's English is more basic, and Sophie's is more intermediate. Same situation, but you'll notice a real difference in how they handle it.
All right, let's listen.
Hey, can I ask you something? I ran into Jamie last night and she mentioned you've been talking to Clara again. Is that true?
Yes, she called me last week. We talked a lot.
Okay, and how did that go?
It was good, I think. She said sorry. She said she is different now.
I hear you, and I'm not saying she hasn't changed. I honestly don't know, but I do remember what it looked like when things ended, Mark, and it was rough. You were not in a good place for a long time.
Yes, it was hard, but I miss her. I think about her every day.
I get that. Missing someone is real. I'm not dismissing that. But there's a difference between missing a person and being ready to go back to that situation.
But maybe this situation is different now. She changed, no?
Maybe, but here's the thing. If she's genuinely different, that's still going to be true in a month. There's no urgency here. She called you out of nowhere, your feelings are all over the place right now, and that's exactly the worst moment to make this kind of decision.
So you think it's a bad idea?
I think the timing is bad, and I think you know that too, a little bit.
Maybe, but it's hard. I still love her.
I know, and that makes it harder, not easier, to see things clearly right now. Last time, Mark, you didn't eat, you didn't go out, you didn't talk to anyone for weeks.
Yes, it was very bad.
Exactly, and I sat with you through a lot of that. So I'm not saying this to be against you. I'm saying it because I was there, and I don't want to watch that happen again.
I know you're my friend. I know.
Then trust me on this, at least for now. Give it a few weeks. Don't call her back today. If it's real, it'll still be real later.
You always say the right things and I hate it.
That's literally my job. Promise me you'll wait a bit.
Okay, I promise. A few weeks.
Good. And talk to me before you do anything, yeah?
Yes. Thanks, Sophie. Really.
Always.
Okay, so that was a tough one.
It really was. And I think what makes it uncomfortable is that most people have been in one of those two positions at some point. Either you're Mark or you're Sophie.
Exactly. And neither one is easy. All right, let's talk about what we noticed. What stood out to you?
So the first thing I want to point out is something Mark does a lot, and it's super common at a basic level. He relies on really short responses when things get emotionally heavy. Yes, it was hard. I know. Maybe. And that's not wrong. Those are correct sentences. But what happens is it shuts the conversation down a little. It doesn't give the other person much to work with.
Right, and contrast that with how Sophie handles the same emotional weight. She doesn't just say, I know it was bad. She says, I sat with you through a lot of that. That one line does so much more. It shows history, it shows care, and it makes her point without sounding preachy.
That's a great one. And here's something I think is really worth noticing. Sophie never says you're wrong or don't do it. Not once. She frames everything around her own experience. I don't want to watch that happen again. I was there. That's called speaking from your perspective instead of telling someone what to do, and it's a huge difference in how the message lands.
In English, there's actually a term for this. We call it using I statements instead of you statements. And it's something that sounds simple but is genuinely hard to do in real conversation, especially when you care about the outcome.
One more thing I loved. At the end, Mark says, "You always say the right things, and I hate it." That's such a natural way to admit someone's right without fully giving in. It's a little bit of humor, a little bit of honesty. That kind of response is very human and very common in English conversations between close friends.
And it works because of the relationship. You can only say something like that to someone you really trust. All right, should we move on?
Let's do it.
Okay, scenario 2. And this one's a bit different because it's not a conflict. It's actually one of those conversations that should feel good, but somehow it doesn't always go that way.
Right. Talking about your future plans, your goals, what you want your life to look like. It sounds easy, but a lot of people struggle to express it in a way that feels real, and not just like a list of things they copied from a job interview.
This time we've got Megan and Andy. Megan's at a more basic level, and Andy's at an intermediate level. They're just two friends catching up, and the topic of the future comes up naturally.
Pay attention to how each of them talks about their dreams. It's not just about vocabulary, it's about how much they develop their ideas and how comfortable they sound doing it.
All right, let's listen.
So what are you thinking about for next year? Any plans?
Yes, I want to travel. Maybe go to Japan?
Oh, nice. Japan's been on my list for a while, too. What made you think of Japan specifically?
I don't know. I saw photos. It looks very beautiful. And the food is good.
Fair enough. Are you thinking like a vacation or more of a longer trip?
Maybe 2 weeks. I want to see Tokyo and also the small places, not only the tourist places.
Yeah, I get that. I did something similar when I went to Portugal last year. I spent a week in Lisbon and then just kind of figured it out as I went. Ended up in this tiny town I'd never heard of, and it was honestly the best part of the trip.
That sounds nice. I want to do that too. Just go and see what happens.
I think that's the best way sometimes. What else? Is it just the trip, or do you have other things you're working towards?
I want to change my job. My job now is okay, but I don't know. I don't feel happy. I want something more creative.
That makes sense. Do you have something specific in mind, or is it more of a feeling right now?
More a feeling. Maybe design. I like design, but I never studied it.
That's actually more common than you'd think. A lot of people I know who work in design didn't study it formally. They just started doing it, built a portfolio, and kind of went from there. The barrier to entry is lower than it used to be.
Really? That's good to know. I always think it's too late.
How old are you? 26?
27.
Yeah, it's definitely not too late. I think that feeling of it's too late shows up a lot when we compare ourselves to people who started earlier. But everyone's timeline is different. And honestly, starting something at 27 with real-life experience behind you is not a bad position to be in.
Maybe you're right. I just don't know where to start.
That's the hardest part, honestly. But I've found that the starting point doesn't have to be perfect. You just need it to be something. Take one online course, make one thing, show it to someone. It builds from there.
Okay, yes. I think I need to just do it.
Exactly. And the Japan trip too, by the way. Sometimes doing one thing you've been putting off makes the other things feel more possible.
Okay. Japan first, then design.
That's a solid plan.
Okay, I liked that one. It felt very real.
It did. And I think part of why it feels real is because Megan is a character a lot of people are going to recognize, either in someone they know or in themselves.
100%. All right, what did you catch?
So the first thing I want to highlight is something really specific that Megan does, and it's worth paying attention to. When Andy asks her why Japan, she says, "I don't know. I saw photos. It looks very beautiful." 3 separate sentences where one would do the job. And that's not a mistake exactly, it's more of a pattern. At a basic level, we tend to break ideas into small pieces instead of connecting them. A more intermediate version of that would be something like, "I came across some photos and just fell in love with it." Same meaning, but it flows.
And that connecting of ideas is something Andy does naturally throughout the whole conversation. He doesn't just answer questions, he adds context, he gives examples, he brings in his own experience to keep things moving. When he talks about Portugal, that whole little story he tells, that's not just filler. That's what fluent conversation actually looks like. You build on things.
Exactly. And here's one I think is really useful for our listeners. Andy uses a phrase that's very common in English but doesn't always get taught. It builds from there. It's simple, but it implies a process, a progression, without having to spell it all out. Intermediate speakers do this a lot. They trust the listener to fill in the gaps a little.
There's also something interesting in how each of them handles uncertainty. Megan says, "I don't know a lot," which is fine, but she leaves it there. Andy, when he's uncertain, still moves forward. I think that's the best way sometimes. He's not sure, but he commits to the idea anyway. That confidence in expressing an opinion, even a soft one, is a big marker of intermediate level.
And the ending. I loved the ending. Megan kind of summarizes everything with Japan first, then design. And it's funny, but it's also her taking ownership of the plan. She started the conversation not knowing where to begin, and she finished it with a clear order of things. That's a nice little arc.
All right, are we ready for the last one?
Oh, this one's fun. I'm excited for this one.
So, you know that moment when someone walks into the room and goes, "Okay, did you hear what happened?" And suddenly everyone stops what they're doing.
Every office, every group chat, and every time.
That's our third scenario. Reacting to a rumor. Whether it's something going around at work or in a friend group, how you respond to gossip actually says a lot about your level of English. Not just your vocabulary, but how you express surprise, doubt, curiosity.
And how you ask follow-up questions without making it obvious that you're absolutely desperate to know more.
This time, we've got Ryan and Rachel. Ryan's at an intermediate level, Rachel's more basic. Same rumor, very different reactions. Let's listen.
Hey, did you hear about Tom in the meeting yesterday?
No, what happened? I left early.
Okay, so Tom was very angry. He said something bad to the boss in front of everyone.
Wait, seriously? Tom said something to Peterson directly?
Yes, very loud. Everyone was there.
Okay, I need more details. What did he actually say?
I don't know exactly, but it was about the new schedule. He said it's not fair.
Huh. I mean, he's not wrong about the schedule, honestly. But saying it like that in front of everyone that's a bold move. How did Peterson react?
He was quiet, very quiet, and his face was red.
Oh, that's never a good sign. Peterson going quiet is somehow scarier than Peterson yelling.
Yes, everyone thought the same. Nobody talked after.
I can imagine. So what happened after that? Did Tom just stay in the meeting?
No, he left. He took his things and left.
He walked out mid-meeting?
Yes.
Okay, that's a lot. Do you know if he's coming in today?
I think yes. I saw his bag near his desk.
Right. This is going to be a very interesting morning then. Did anyone talk to him after? Like, did he say anything to anyone?
Sarah talked to him, but I don't know what she said. She looked serious.
Sarah's always serious, so that doesn't tell us much. Look, I get why Tom's frustrated. We all are. But there's a way to do these things, you know? You pick your moment, you frame it the right way. Walking out of a meeting doesn't really help your case.
Yes, I agree. But maybe he was very tired, like too much.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not judging him. I've had moments where I was this close to saying something I'd regret. We all have. I just hope it doesn't turn into something bigger for him.
Me too. He's a good person.
He is. All right, let's act normal when he gets here. Last thing he needs is everyone staring at him.
Yes, normal. Okay.
You're already staring at the door, Rachel.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that last one was fun.
It really was. And a little too relatable.
A little too relatable, yeah. All right, let's get into it. What stood out to you?
So the contrast here is really clear. And I think it's one of the most useful ones we've done today. Rachel knows the story. She was there. She has all the information. But she really struggles to tell it in a way that builds tension or keeps you engaged. Everything comes out flat. He was very angry. He left. Everyone was quiet. It's correct English, but it doesn't pull you in.
And Ryan, who wasn't even there, ends up driving the whole conversation. He's the one asking follow-up questions. He's the one adding reactions, he's the one giving context, which is interesting because you'd expect the person with the information to be leading. But fluency isn't just about having something to say. It's about knowing how to say it in a way that keeps the other person engaged.
That's a really good point. And Ryan's follow-up questions are worth looking at closely. He doesn't just say really or wow. He builds on what he hears. He walked out mid-meeting. That's called an echo question, and it's incredibly common in natural English. You take the key information and you throw it back as a question. It shows you're listening and it keeps things moving without you having to think of something completely new to say.
It's also a great trick for when you're in a conversation and you're not sure what to say next. You don't have to be clever. You just reflect what you heard and let the other person keep going.
Exactly. And one more thing. The way Ryan handles the moment where he could easily just gossip and judge Tom. He doesn't. He says, "I'm not judging him. I've had moments where I was this close to saying something I'd regret." That kind of self-awareness in a conversation, being able to step back and see both sides, that's very much an intermediate skill. It requires more vocabulary, more nuance, and honestly, more emotional intelligence in the language.
Rachel does it too at the end in her own way. Maybe he was very tired. Like, too much. It's simple, but it's empathetic. And that like too much is actually very natural. It's the kind of thing a native speaker would say.
Absolutely. All right, I think that's a wrap for today.
It is. 3 conversations, 3 very different situations, and a lot of English in between. Thanks for listening to the Max and Mia podcast. If this episode was useful, share it with someone who's also working on their English. It genuinely helps.
And if you've got a scenario you'd like us to cover, send it our way. We read everything.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
To keep taking your English to the next level, click on the next video or explore the others we've made for you.